At its peak, Blockbuster made roughly $800 million a year from a single source: late fees. That was about 16% of the entire company's revenue, coming from customers who hated paying it every single time. A small startup noticed that number and built its entire business model around one specific goal: making that exact revenue stream disappear. Reed Hastings later told a story about the spark behind it: a $40 late fee he owed Blockbuster for a copy of Apollo 13. His co-founder has since disputed how much that one fee actually mattered, but the frustration behind it was real and widely shared. In 1997, Hastings and Mark Randolph founded a company built entirely around removing that pain point: Netflix. It wasn't just a competitor entering a crowded video rental market. It was a company engineering a direct financial attack on the one number Blockbuster couldn't afford to lose. If Blockbuster matched the attack by dropping late fees, it would blow an $800 million hole in its own income. If it didn't, it would keep bleeding customers who resented every extra charge. There was no clean way out, and almost nobody at Blockbuster saw it coming in time. So how did a mail-order DVD startup turn a rival's most profitable habit into its fatal weakness? To understand why late fees were so central to Blockbuster, you have to understand the economics of video rental in the 1990s. New release DVDs and tapes were expensive for stores to license and stock, often costing far more per copy than a retail customer would ever pay to buy one outright. Stores needed each copy to circulate constantly to make that cost back. Short rental windows, typically just a few days, kept inventory turning over fast. Late fees weren't just a penalty, they were a core part of how the entire rental math worked. A customer who returned a movie late wasn't just annoying, they were disrupting a carefully tuned inventory system built for speed. Over time, that penalty grew into something else entirely: one of the most reliable profit centers in the entire company. Late fees required almost no additional cost to collect, no extra inventory, no extra staff, just an automatic charge triggered by a customer's own behavior. That combination, minimal cost and maximum margin, made late fees one of the most profitable line items Blockbuster had. At its peak in the mid-2000s, Blockbuster's total annual revenue topped $6 billion, which makes that $800 million late fee slice even more remarkable. By the late 1990s, this had become deeply embedded in how the company planned its finances. Wall Street analysts tracking Blockbuster's earnings paid close attention to rental frequency and, indirectly, to late fee revenue. Executives had little incentive to disrupt a revenue stream that consistently delivered high margins with almost no operating cost. That's precisely the trap Netflix identified from the outside. In 1998, Netflix launched as a DVD-by-mail rental service, initially charging per-disc rental fees similar to traditional stores. Within a year, in 1999, the company pivoted to something radically different: a flat monthly subscription with no due dates and no late fees at all. Customers could keep a DVD as long as they wanted, return it, and the next title on your queue shipped automatically. There was no clock running, no penalty waiting, no reason to dread a forgotten return. The economics behind that model relied on a simple bet: a flat monthly fee would, on average, cost Netflix less in shipping and inventory than what a typical customer would have paid in rental and late fees combined. That single structural choice directly targeted the exact anxiety millions of Blockbuster customers already felt. Netflix's early marketing leaned hard into that resentment, explicitly promoting the absence of late fees as its core selling point. It wasn't subtle, and it wasn't meant to be. Blockbuster, meanwhile, was posting strong profits, and strong profits rarely trigger urgent strategic change. In 2000, Netflix executives, including Hastings, approached Blockbuster with an offer: buy us for $50 million and fold our subscription model into your existing stores. According to accounts from people in the room, Blockbuster's leadership treated the pitch as close to a joke. At the time, Blockbuster commanded roughly 9,000 stores worldwide and dominant market share. A tiny mail-order startup with a few tens of thousands of subscribers didn't look like an existential threat. That decision, to walk away, would later become one of the most cited missed acquisitions in corporate history. For the first several years, Blockbuster's caution seemed reasonable. Netflix grew, but slowly, constrained by DVD-by-mail shipping logistics and limited brand awareness. Blockbuster kept collecting its late fees, kept opening new stores, and kept reporting healthy year-over-year numbers through the early 2000s. But subscriber growth at Netflix kept compounding, and word of mouth about no more late fees kept spreading. By 2004, Netflix had grown to roughly 2 million subscribers. Small next to Blockbuster's footprint, but growing consistently quarter over quarter. That single number mattered less than its trajectory. Subscriber counts were doubling roughly every year, a growth curve Blockbuster's own store-based model simply couldn't replicate. That year, Blockbuster finally moved, launching a program called Total Access. Total Access eliminated Blockbuster's own late fees and let customers return DVDs by mail or in-store, blending the strengths of both models. On paper, it was a smart, even obvious countermove. In practice, it required Blockbuster to voluntarily destroy the exact revenue stream it had spent years optimizing around. Removing roughly $800 million in annual late fee income wasn't a minor accounting adjustment. It was a direct hit to reported profitability, right as the company was trying to fund an expensive new logistics operation to compete with Netflix's mail system. Initially, Total Access actually worked. Blockbuster added millions of subscribers between 2004 and 2006, briefly closing the gap with Netflix. But the financial strain was severe, and it exposed a deeper conflict inside the company. CEO John Antioco pushed to keep investing heavily in the online and hybrid rental strategy, betting the company's future on it. Investor Carl Icahn, who joined Blockbuster's board in 2005, pushed back hard against the scale of that spending. The resulting boardroom conflict became public, contentious, and deeply damaging to strategic continuity at exactly the moment decisive action mattered most. Antioco eventually resigned in 2007, and new leadership shifted priorities again, slowing the momentum Total Access had briefly built. That same year, 2007, Netflix launched streaming video, a technological leap Blockbuster's store and mail infrastructure was never built to match. Streaming didn't just remove late fees, it removed discs, mail, and physical stores from the entire equation. Blockbuster was now fighting a two-front war, a subscription model that had already eroded its most profitable revenue line, and a streaming platform making physical rental itself feel outdated. Revenue and store counts began falling sharply through the late 2000s. Debt taken on to fund earlier expansion and the Total Access build-out became increasingly difficult to service as income shrank. By 2010, Blockbuster filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, listing debts exceeding $1 billion. In 2011, satellite TV provider Dish Network acquired Blockbuster's remaining assets out of bankruptcy for roughly $320 million, a fraction of the company's former valuation. Most remaining corporate-owned stores closed within the following 2 to 3 years. Today, a single independently owned Blockbuster franchise still operates in Bend, Oregon, functioning largely as a nostalgia destination rather than a serious rental business. Meanwhile, Netflix grew from that tiny mail-order subscription service into one of the largest entertainment companies in the world, spanning streaming, film, and television production. It's worth pausing on the scale of that reversal. A company with roughly 9,000 stores and dominant market share collapsed into a single tourist attraction storefront within about a decade and a half. By the mid-2020s, Netflix's market value sat in the hundreds of billions of dollars, more than 1,000 times what Blockbuster once offered to sell itself for. The company that replaced it grew from a rejected $50 million acquisition target into a global media giant. None of that reversal happened because Netflix simply offered movies more conveniently. It happened because Netflix identified the single revenue mechanism Blockbuster depended on most and built a business model specifically incompatible with it. That's a different kind of competition than simply offering a better product. It's targeting the exact thing a competitor can't easily give up and forcing them to choose between short-term profit and long-term survival. Blockbuster's leadership wasn't incompetent. Many of its early decisions were rational responses to the information available at the time. Late fees were, by every normal financial measure, a genuinely excellent line of business, right up until a competitor made hating them a reason to leave. That's the trap incumbents repeatedly fall into. Optimizing a profitable system so thoroughly that abandoning it, even when necessary, becomes organizationally and financially painful. Total Access proved Blockbuster could adapt technically. It didn't prove the company could survive the financial and internal political cost of adapting fast enough. By the time streaming arrived, Blockbuster was already fighting the previous war, with a wounded balance sheet and a divided board. Zooming out, this pattern shows up constantly across industries far beyond video rental. Software companies replaced expensive one-time license fees with predictable monthly subscriptions, often undercutting rivals stuck defending high upfront pricing. Airlines that built profit models around baggage and change fees have faced newer entrants marketing no hidden fees as a core pitch. Banks that relied heavily on overdraft fees have lost customers to fintech apps explicitly built to eliminate them. In each case, the disruptor isn't necessarily building a fundamentally better core product. They're identifying the exact friction point customers already resent and making its removal the entire value proposition. Incumbents in every one of these cases faced Blockbuster's exact dilemma: match the change and gut a profitable revenue line, or resist and keep leaking customers who feel punished by the old model. Most incumbents move too slowly, precisely because the threatened revenue line still looks healthy on quarterly reports, right up until it collapses. There's a specific lesson in the fact that Blockbuster's leadership actually understood the threat and still couldn't move fast enough. Antioco saw the shift coming and pushed hard for change. The surrounding financial and governance pressures still slowed the response past the point it mattered. Recognizing a threat and successfully restructuring an entire profit model around it are two very different organizational challenges. The gap between those two things is where most disrupted incumbents actually die. For consumers today, the entire concept of a late fee on entertainment has essentially disappeared, replaced by the subscription model Netflix pioneered. Almost nobody under a certain age has any lived memory of anxiously rushing a video back before a deadline. That shift feels invisible now precisely because it succeeded so completely. The friction Netflix removed was real, and its removal became the new, unquestioned default across the entire industry. Subscription fatigue has become its own modern complaint, ironically for many of the same reasons late fees once were. Unpredictable charges people feel powerless to avoid. Netflix itself would later face similar criticism as it introduced password-sharing crackdowns and ad-supported tiers, proof that no friction removal strategy stays universally loved forever. It's a strange kind of victory. The winning strategy becomes so normalized that people forget there was ever a war over it at all. Blockbuster isn't remembered today as a company that made a single fatal mistake. It's remembered as a cautionary story about how the most profitable part of a business can quietly become its greatest vulnerability. The very system that generated $800 million a year in easy, low-cost revenue was the exact system a competitor engineered its entire business around destroying. Nobody at Blockbuster in the 1990s was wrong to see late fees as good business. They just never seriously asked what would happen if someone built a company whose entire purpose was making that good business impossible to defend. That's the quiet, unsettling core of this story. The thing keeping your business alive today can be the exact thing a competitor is already building a weapon out of, and you may not recognize it as a weapon until it's far too late to disarm.